Getting a brief look behind enemy lines this afternoon, Brisbane is the third Queensland side to meet the Pirates in 9 days.
Tonight's match is going to be very, very difficult, mark my words.
First Townsville, then Cairns, the Bullets are desperate to avoid becoming another of the Pirates' scalps.
They're the hunted, we're the hunters today, so we're going to try and go after them. They've some good form. Mike Helms is playing really good basketball, and Aaron Chahir and the big guys, so they've got a good team going.
The Bullets, though, have weapons of their own. Sam McKinnon was a real headache for the Pirates, leading his side to a big win when both teams last met in Brisbane.
He'll come out and he'll defend and he'll rebound. He'll do all the things that he's renowned for, and hopefully he'll be a game breaker this evening.
Suffering a hamstring injury, Brisbane captain Derek Rucker is the only Bullet who won't play tonight. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Well, the main reason is that, as this week's inflation figures showed, although petrol prices are pushing headline inflation up, there is no evidence that higher petrol prices are pushing up the prices of other goods and services.
There are concerns for the hunters building industry with clear signs of a downturn, which according to economists could slow further for the remainder of 2005 and into 2006. And that's impacting on jobs. Business people attending today's Economic Update breakfast were told that employment in the construction industry is 14% lower than it was in 2004, which is equivalent to a drop of 4,000 jobs.
Despite the fact that employment overall has been rising, as an industry within our economy, construction actually has been shrinking, and the signs are to date that it's not going to pick up in the short term.
Non-residential building approvals have fallen a staggering 62.4% compared to the state average of 14.6%, while residential approvals have fallen 19.8%. So what's the reason?
I think that we've been through a surge in building approvals over the last couple of years, and that would have satisfied a lot of demand for building. But I still think that even though there's been a bit of time now since the last interest rate rise, that certainly will be having an effect in cooling down the housing market.
Another important indicator for the building industry is the number of people interested in buying property in the next 3 months. It has fallen from 5.7% of the population in September 2004 to 4.6% in 2005. That's back to levels of the mid-1990s. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Premier Morris Yema claimed the spotlight turning the first sod on a $36 million medical polyclinic. The irony, according to original promises, by now the facility should already look something like this. 4 years in planning, the Hunter Street Health Centre was due to be finished in 2006. With work just starting now, it's now expected to be ready by mid-2007.
The important thing is to plan and get it right and then deliver it. And today is about delivering. It's underway.
Meantime, the Minister for Health, John Hatzistakos, announced the deal to redevelop the Mater Hospital under a public-private partnership would be signed in the next few weeks. He claims no workers will be sacked.
Staff will be accommodated either at the Mater or somewhere else in the Hunter New England Area Health Service.
But there were certainly no definite answers on the future of the Swansea Bridge, Premier Yema refusing to commit to a tunnel or a new higher bridge.
We have to work through the options and the issues with the bridge. As I said, there have been 2 alternatives that have been suggested, and they of themselves have created community concern. So this is an issue that needs to be worked through carefully.
Todd Nardi, NBN News. Outside the Hunter Business Chamber AGM, protesters were hoping to apply the blowtorch to Michael Costa, calling for the Premier to sack the Minister for the Hunter. Inside, Premier Yema was feeling the heat on different issues. He announced a new Premier's task force would be formed to report on the future of public transport in Newcastle's CBD. The report to bring together all those reports that have gone before it. The good news is the Premier has promised a decision will be made by February 2006.
That's why the task force has got a deadline of the end of February to bring it all to a conclusion, and why there's dollars to back up the work of the task force.
That's $20 million to implement the findings of the task force, which will consider all options from simply leaving rail services as they are to closing the line.
We need to ensure that this is not just a flick pass to another committee.
On the issue of the failed multi-purpose terminal, these infamous words from the former Premier would have been in the minds of many Newcastle business leaders.
But we would move heaven and earth to see a major port facility of this kind established here in Newcastle.
While heaven and earth hasn't budged, the new Premier promised the MPT was still a possibility for Newcastle, despite the failure to secure a private investor to establish the terminal.
The land is there, it's got a zoning, it is going to be protected for port and industrial use.
This multi-purpose terminal is a big one for the Hunter. It's worth thousands of jobs. We need the government support, we need a financial commitment.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Given medical clearance this week to play against Sydney FC on Sunday, Steve Eagleton completes the starting 11 after a 5-week recovery.
I know my body, I think, so I'm confident with the knee, the doctor's confident.
Indeed, the whole team is confident, staring down the barrel of a 5-week series of matches on the road.
Playing away doesn't frighten us one bit, to be honest. I think we've got a team that's well equipped to play away from home.
Eagleton is the only change to what's been a winning team. Mushalik and Wheelhouse among those to again feature on the reserves list.
And we have been able to put that 11 on the pitch. They've been very successful, and it's up to these guys to, keep putting the pressure on.
The boys are doing really well, and I think the ones that are on the bench have just got to sort of wait their time.
Jade North is also biding his time, with national player Craig Moore from the Socceroos not selected in the squad to meet Uruguay in the World Cup qualifiers next month.
Jade, as I understand it, is first reserve to be called upon if anybody drops out.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Policing numbers. It's about targeting antisocial behaviour, street level offences and alcohol related crime over a 3-day period.
This site bears few reminders of the old Stanford Merthyr colliery, a small plaque, a display of photographs and tales from former miners keeping the memory alive. The grandfather of 84-year-old Ron Jones was one of 6 men killed as a result of an underground explosion at the site on Sunday, the 29th of October 1905.
Should be always remembered when people go down the mines.
It's believed if the explosion had happened midweek, the casualties would have been much greater. Stories of that day when wives lost husbands and children became fatherless were today told at the place where 5 of the men have been laid to rest.
Friends and colleagues of the men who were killed or injured, life was forever changed.
Past and present mining industry workers and school children were among those who paid tribute. Colleen West, NBN News.
Game 150 for Geordie Cullen and 350 for Aaron Trahair. Both were recognised for their efforts, but the real reward was to come later on. Bullets veteran Mark Bradkey was quick off the mark, but it was Hunter to set the pace, led by Mike Helms. Russell Hinder showed class to pull off another 2, a fairy tale night as well for Aaron Trahair. Larry Davidson made an impact off the bench, grabbing 3, those long-range attempts perfected by Helms. He was a marked man though, but not even the defensive partnership of Sam McKinnon and Steve Black could throw the import off his game. Brisbane did enjoy its moments and started to recover, but with all hands on deck, Ben Melmoth spearheaded a 4th quarter fight back. With nothing in it, Helms looked comfortable directing play, grabbing another 2 for himself, finishing with a game-high 25 points. The 85-83 point win over Brisbane, not quite a grand final, but it might as well have been a confidence boost going into tomorrow's match with the Tigers in Melbourne.
The northern foreshore of the lake beside Liddell Power Station was the setting for other industrious purposes today. The recreation area will be the setting for a music festival with a twist when Power Plant is staged from tomorrow through until Sunday. It's organised by a group known as Regen, which stands for Random Evolution of Growth, Entertainment and Nature. In short, musicians and artisans who want to do their stuff and get their hands dirty for all the right environmental reasons.
We've got environmental consultants. I myself am a bush regenerator in Sydney. And we're at the same time, there's musicians amongst us as well. So it's combining all our passions to form one big festival.
While their presence at Lake Liddell will only be for this weekend, it's the planting of 4,000 natives they hope their festival will be long remembered for. The critical mass of volunteers will be openly welcomed by Landcare.
What we want to do is drive a corridor of trees all the way from the river up to the escarpment out there.
Even though the area is near power stations and coal mines, the environmental damage to be repaired actually dates back to European settlement in the Hunter Valley almost 200 years ago.
When the Jets faced New Zealand in September, they came away with a stunning 4-0 victory. But coach Richard Money says it's not likely to be as easy this time round.
They made 2 or 3 errors in defence that day, which helped us. And obviously they'll be trying to make sure that doesn't happen this week.
The Jets are 5th on the ladder, but only 3 points away from 2nd. And Money has his eyes on some young guns for Saturday's crucial New Zealand clash.
Both Musilik and Wheelhouse very much in my thoughts for this week. So we'll give it some thought today and tomorrow as exactly how we're going to start.
Away games in Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth follow the Auckland clash before the Jets return home against Adelaide on the 2nd of December. But for now, it's all eyes on the Kiwis.
We've probably focused more on this match than any other game this season, if that's possible. If we walk out of this match with 3 points in the bag, however we get it, however we play, I'll be delighted.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
There's still a wealth of skills and talent in Newcastle that could certainly fill a lot of the needs we have for this project.
She's only 2 weeks old and already a star. Little Frances Assisi, named after the patron saint of animals, is a rarity at the Good Samaritan's Donkey Sanctuary. It doesn't breed donkeys, but Frances's mum Dainty was already pregnant when she arrived at the refuge. So here she is, a bouncing bundle of joy. The newborn is being cared for at the sanctuary's hospital, kept company by its oldest donkey, Alice. She's 53. Old even in donkey's years. Frances won't stay here though. In about a year she'll move down the road to join the rest of the sanctuary's herd in even greener pastures. Sandy Kokas has been around donkeys all her life. Her mother founded the sanctuary 15 years ago. Now Sandy manages the property and she's passionate about the often maligned creatures.
I mean, people need to come out here and look and see the donkeys. I mean, they're not stubborn, they're not violent, they're not vicious. They're a loving, gorgeous, sweet animal.
They're certainly friendly. The sanctuary relies on donations and volunteers to survive and is in urgent need of both. Pat Hines travels from Sydney to help out.
This is a really good escape from the city and a working holiday, and I know it's doing something worthwhile.
The sanctuary currently cares for 168 donkeys. Many of them have come from backgrounds of abuse or neglect. This place must seem like heaven. Little Frances has a lot to look forward to. New friends, and not just the donkey variety. The resident singing chihuahua, sure to keep her entertained. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
After what happened over in Bali, and you know, a few of the local families from Newcastle were involved in it, so
just trying to sort of bring a good mood to the town and to get everyone out and support the families that were involved in it.
For years, the Hunters' best players in the fast and physical game of water polo had to play in Sydney-based teams to have a shot at competition at the national level. It's hoped that many of those players will return to the Hunter to play in their own national team.
It was more than overdue that we took the final step and gave those local players the opportunity to compete for their hometown rather than to travel down the F3 to have to do that.
The Hurricanes have been hard in training at Lambton Pool and are sitting about halfway up the ladder in the pre-season rounds. They launched their season at Lambton on Sunday afternoon before focusing on next year's league, which will feature 14 home and 10 away games.
Our indicators of success next year would be to finish in the top half of the competition, and that's where we're aiming to be. To facilitate that, we will be drawing on a couple of international imports to strengthen the side, at least in the initial years.
He was found at Flinders Street Station and obviously without a ticket. Everything. He's my sole companion. I got him the month after my wife died.
Education was the theme for the Healthy School Canteens Expo at Maitland Town Hall. One lesson you quickly learnt from the 40-plus commercial exhibitors is that tuck shop economics equals big business. While the usual favourites are represented, the health and education departments are encouraging healthy food choices through their Fresh Tastes at School canteen strategy.
So now we're seeing a greater emphasis on fresh fruit and vegetables, breads, cereals, your lean meat, your low-fat dairy foods. But a lot of the companies that are here today, they don't supply those foods. So still the old-fashioned meat pie is still there. The companies have just reformulated the product. They made them smaller in size and lower in fats.
A Lake Macquarie bakery does make a lean beef pie under licence, which is being sold across parts of the state. The healthier version of the Aussie icon was first developed a decade ago and is still the subject of extensive research.
We developed the reduced fat, reduced salt and even reduced price in those days, and it was guaranteed lean beef, and we did a lot of exploratory work and we came up with the product and it's been developed ever since then.
And since the school canteen is as much about business as food, some of the 300 participants undertook workshops on subjects as diverse as marketing, as well as some culinary tips.
It's prime beachfront real estate and one of the largest potential development sites in Newcastle. But according to Greens councillor Michael Osborne, once the hospital is demolished, around 30% of the Royal Newcastle site should be dedicated as a public park overlooking the beach.
This site's public land. It has been since the early 1800s for public purposes. What I'd like to see is a large area set aside for the public.
Lord Mayor John Tate says a public park of that size is unfeasible. He believes the Greens are using the suggestion as a political tool to further delay a decision.
I'm really concerned that it's almost one calendar year since Council started to look at this. I'm therefore concerned that we're getting close to the point where the Minister and his department may call the development in, the application in, and in fact make a determination.
The Lord Mayor's vision for the site looks something like this, the development including a hotel, apartments, commercial areas and open space. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's taken 18 months to develop the draft Lower Hunter Regional Strategy, and according to community and business leaders, there's one noticeable absence: a plan for infrastructure, including roads, hospitals and schools.
There is work happening in terms of infrastructure, and for the next budget cycle, May, June next year, I expect that we'll be saying a lot more about infrastructure.
It's predicted an extra 125,000 people will call the Lower Hunter home over the next 25 years, meaning there'll need to be around 95,000 new dwellings.
I'm really pleased about the growth rate. I think it's something that can be sustained.
Medowie, North Raymond Terrace, Thornton, Lochinvar, Bellbird, Cooranbong and Wyee have been identified as key growth areas. 30,000 retail and commercial jobs have also been proposed. 10,000 new jobs are expected to be created in the Newcastle CBD alone, raising the question, will our transport system cope with the increase in numbers, and where would people park? The state government will work with councils to finalise the plan. They're hoping to do that in just 5 months.
We're better off to take time and get it right, measure twice and cut once, and not rush this.
Colleen West, NBN News.
Oyster harvesting from the southern half of Tilligrig Creek has been banned since July because traces of human waste and a stomach virus were found in oyster meat, caused partly by leaking septic tanks at Salt Ash and Bob's Farm. Port Stephens Council has ordered 50 households to replace their leaking systems immediately, and another 400 should be replaced over time. But not everyone at today's Community Information Day at Salt Ash was happy.
A number of us spent a considerable amount of money renovating systems to comply with what Council were after 2 years ago. They've now changed the goalposts and suggesting that within 2 years we're going to have to pay again.
A lot of expense, and there'd be a lot of people that can't afford it.
People are generally not happy when we're telling them to upgrade their septic systems and spend between, say, $9,000 and $10,000. But some are failing really badly, so we're telling them to upgrade them urgently.
Yeah, we were going to go for 120 hours, and we would have and could have done that. As you say, unfortunately, one of our members that was bowling, mother-in-law, passed away. So yeah, we had to pull up stumps.
Robinson's Anna Bay Sand has been operating legally at Port Stephens since the late 1940s, but for a one-year period between mid-2003 and 2004, while Councillor Jeff Robinson was the director, the company mined an area for which it had no approval.
The company has undertaken development activity, being extraction of sand, without development consent on Crown land, and by virtue of that, they've avoided paying Section 94 fees, which are collected to assist in maintaining the roads that the material travels across.
Those fees total about $140,000, as well as government royalties that weren't paid. The company, which also dumped waste on the site, could be forced to pay that money back.
We're aware that the Department of Lands has separately commenced criminal proceedings against the company for the activity that's been undertaken, and the Department of Environment and Conservation is investigating the waste issues.
Councillor Robinson confirmed today that the company had operated without the proper approvals. The Department of Local Government will decide if he should be suspended from council over his involvement in the affair. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
I don't think players go out to win it. They go out to play their best, and it's up to the judges. I reckon they'd be glad, if they won the award, because they're top of the tree.
Tocal sprang from humble beginnings with a handful of students back in 1965 to become one of the country's premier agricultural colleges.
Just 15 students in 1965 through to 125 this year, and looks like it being a few extras next year.
Nestled in beautiful Hunter Valley countryside, Tocal today reflected on its 40-year history and the spirit of the college, with past and present students attending, many of whom are successful farmers. The college offers courses in a range of farming practices, from modern farm machinery techniques to horse skills, which were demonstrated today. And it seems the future is looking bright for Tocal, with farm skills training a necessity for those wishing to make a livelihood from the land.
Our commitment to farming and agriculture is where our heart is, and we have great confidence in the future of agriculture, and therefore we have a great confidence in the future of Tocal.
It must feel like an eternity since the Pirates last played at home, but there are pitfalls to being back.
I've had to make my bed and wash up, which hasn't been as much fun. But yeah, it's been good to have a week here, good week of practice, and it just makes you feel like you're a normal person again.
There's nothing normal about Mike Helms, though, the league's second highest point scorer, preparing to get reacquainted with the Taipans' Darnell Mee.
He's a real good defensive player, so I think they might stick him on me the whole game. But, I'm going to take it how I come. He's a good player, I'm a good player. And good players are supposed to go at it.
Neither club is tiptoeing around the match-up, and it's the Pirates who, on paper, go into the game better prepared. The Taipans play Brisbane shortly before backing up 24 hours later to play in Newcastle.
We've played a few back and people have caught us, tied on the second leg. So I think this is our first one this year where we get to get somebody maybe a little bit more tired and maybe a little bit underprepared.
Alarm bells too for the Pirates. Coach Adrian Hurley is watching Brad Davidson and Ben Melmoth, both nursing minor shoulder injuries. They will start while Aaron Trahair has been replaced by Odell Bradley. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. The Newcastle Golf Club course didn't look too inviting today, but what a welcome home for Nathan Green, now the proud holder of a lucrative US PGA Tour card.
Yeah, it's been a pretty long grind. At 30, I'm probably one of the elder ones to finally qualify, but yeah, over the moon about it.
With good reason. Green has spent almost 3 years working towards this moment, and one he was quick to share with local coach Jason Laws. It's a timely match-up with the seasoned professional launching a whirlwind domestic campaign before heading back to the States.
Yeah, got the Australian Open and the PGA and the Masters coming up, and hopefully consolidate a good Order of Merit finish on the Australian Tour, which I haven't sort of done for a few years, so that'll be good.
Admitting to being homesick at times, Green's biggest challenge will be life off the course when he sets up base in Texas. Being on tour means 10 months away from Newcastle, but made easier perhaps, given the company he's about to keep.
It's meant to act as a guiding light for growth in the Lower Hunter, setting out how 125,000 people would be absorbed into the region over 25 years. But the Lower Hunter regional strategy has been criticised for predicting growth rates based on what the state government thinks it can afford and lower than what they're likely to be.
I think the danger is the same thing that we've seen in Sydney and on the Central Coast, in that if you're not planning for that sort of population growth, you don't have the infrastructure.
We just can't afford to be profligate and make promises we can't keep. What will happen here is that the promises that will be made will be funded.
Meanwhile, the state government is being urged to reconsider 5,000 hectares of bushland earmarked for development.
The Lower Hunter has enough land to cope with expected development without any further loss of biodiversity or bushlands.
Colleen West, NBN News. Today's scenes may only be simulated emergencies, but they're based on situations mine workers have had to face in the past. The Hunter Valley Mines Rescue Competition today attracted 10 teams, industry experts judging response times, teamwork and how first aid is administered in a range of situations, including falls, fires and vehicle crashes.
They have to put these skills into practice on the mine sites to reduce the effect of an accident on site, and this is really the only place that they get to test it.
The winning team will be announced tonight at the Singleton Bowling Club.
Executives of the estate did a search throughout Australia to find the owners, the beneficiaries of the various estates, and this is the result.
It's been a tale of two riders in the 250cc World Championship, with the title already wrapped up and in front of a massive home crowd. Spain's Dani Pedrosa was keen to hold off Casey Stoner. A fall in qualifying relegated Stoner to 7th on the grid. Carrying a shoulder injury, the young Aussie quickly made ground through the field. With 5 wins in the 250s this year, the most ever by an Australian, who would dare write Stoner off? There was fireworks off the track in Valencia. On it, Stoner created the spark, making his move into 3rd spot on lap 8. His race could have ended there. That sort of racing is expected to win the brave 20-year-old a ride with possibly Yamaha or Honda in the Premier MotoGP class next year. Pedrosa is also destined for MotoGP. He finished his 250cc career with a win, while Stoner ended his with a 3rd place finish.
Didn't really expect to even be, where I was in the race, so, I think we did a pretty good job.
It was his 10th podium appearance in a year he was crowned number 2 in the world. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Look, up in the sky. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's crews from Energy Australia getting ready for the big shoot. They spent today fitting brackets to light poles which will carry high-powered lighting used for the movie. The key location will be University House, possibly as the scene of a damsel in distress rescue.
Well, it's the Art Deco architecture and also the vicinity that it's in. It's near the park, it's next to City Hall. They just loved everything about it, really. Logistically, it's a fantastic location.
The planned closure of King Street for 5 days from November the 21st has raised some eyebrows, but Film Hunter says the disruption will be managed.
King Street will be closed from Auckland through to Derby Street, so there will be a couple of minor inconveniences, but we've got a traffic management plan in place.
It's estimated the filming will bring over $1 million to the city in accommodation, food, supplies, site rentals and related services for the 150 crew.
Superman Returns is probably the biggest film in the world at the moment, so to have our iconic buildings and our landscapes used in the film is going to be a fantastic benefit to the region.
The $400 million movie is due for release next June. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's this kind of hands-on experience with patients that helps make a well-rounded doctor. But the University of Newcastle study has found that trainees aren't getting enough bedside practice. In Hunter hospitals, only a third of patients are available to students for one reason or another.
And although we're treating more patients, patients are in for a shorter period of time, and our care has shifted from being just hospital-based to being outpatient and community-based.
In addition, the study found some patients are unwilling to be seen by trainees. Dr. Lyons says there needs to be a rethink of the way in which training is conducted so that it's not so dependent on the hospital experience.
Care is provided as much as possible in a community setting or an outpatient setting, in a GP's rooms or a specialist rooms, in private hospitals. So we've now got to think about expanding the way we provide that teaching to reflect all of those clinical environments.
Dr. Lyons says training could also be expanded more into Hunter New England Health's rural settings.
On his home green, Jason Stokes just had to survive the first morning of the Champion of Champions knockout to better his performance of last year. That day, the Soldiers Point bowler suffered a first-round elimination.
Last year was a good experience, and basically to improve on last year and hopefully get through to at least the semi-final final would be fantastic.
The first round was no problem at all this time. Stokes easily through to this afternoon's quarter-final. Another win there now has him in the semis. The Champion of Champions sees the number one player from each of the 16 New South Wales zones play for the prestigious title of State Singles Champion. Big-name Australian bowlers Aaron Sheriff from Halakalani and Tom Ellam from the South Coast had a premature quarter-final showdown. Sheriff was eliminated. Ellam now a clear favourite for the title. In tomorrow's semi, he'll take on the Soldiers Point man of the moment.
Puts a lot of pressure on you because you've got a lot of spectators coming around and watching you, and they expect the expectations there for you to obviously perform well. And, you know, if you don't, obviously you're going to cop a bit back in the club.
The final will be played tomorrow afternoon. The pairs start on Wednesday. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
He's been called the greatest surfer of all time, and watching Andy Irons bail out of the race for the 2005 world title in Brazil, you get the feeling Kelly Slater was experiencing one of the greatest feelings of all time. Irons' loss in the fourth round of the Nova Skin Festival secured Slater a record 7th WCT crown. He won his first at the tender age of 20. Now 33, he's both the youngest and oldest surfer to secure the coveted title. After celebrating with a crazed Brazilian crowd, there was a quick call to someone special before he signalled what some believed could never be achieved.
Super relieved it's over. It was an amazing year.
But perhaps even more extraordinary than his record-breaking feat was the fact he spared a thought for how his biggest rival was doing.
I'm feeling for Andy right now. I know how he feels, you know, and so I guess we're kind of even in a way.
Damien Hobgood made it a double whammy for Florida when he took out the final against local Victor Rebus, but the day belonged to Slater, who's now not only raised the bar of surfing, he's lifted it off the scale. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
But at Christmas time, it's a time to remember those who are doing not so well, particularly children growing up in families that don't have good jobs. A lot of them don't have jobs at all, and they often get overlooked at Christmas time.
These faces will represent our community when the Globe's most inclusive relay passes through town in January. The Melbourne Commonwealth Games may be 126 days away, but the region's 16 runners could barely contain their excitement when they were named at a ceremony in Newcastle today. They're all considered to be unsung heroes, and when you hear what Sister Carmel Hansen has been doing for the last couple of decades, you can understand why.
Living with homeless men, women and children at the House of Hospitality and working with St Vincent de Paul, both as a psychologist and a solicitor.
David Buchner from Macquarie Hills and prominent businessman Gary Dowling were also selected and are planning to begin training soon.
Used to do a bit of running years and years ago, but probably on this occasion they might have the ambulance behind me, but I'll be there.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Pretty easy access to your luggage, isn't it? So good.
Very nice. It's going to be very nice when it's finished.
"43-year-old Taree man Darren Tyrrell was shot dead yesterday outside this block of units where he'd been living. Today, 71-year-old Kenneth Duncan Moore, who also resides in Taree, appeared in Foster Local Court, charged with his murder.
Police actually located the 71-year-old male at the scene. He was taken into custody yesterday afternoon and was charged last night.
Police say the alleged murder weapon, a .22 calibre rifle, was found at the scene. It, along with numerous rounds of ammunition, are now being ballistically tested by scientific police. The accused man's hands have also been tested for gunpowder residue, with authorities now awaiting the results.
The deceased and the 71-year-old male were known to each other, but I can't comment further than that.
The body was due to undergo an autopsy in Newcastle today. The magistrate ruled that the prosecution has an extremely strong case and, in light of the seriousness of the charge, refused bail. The case will now be adjourned to Taree Local Court for mention on the 22nd of November. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Alwyn Morris started race 8 aboard Settle but ended up sprawled all over the track. He was tipped out in the middle of a tight group, dragged for a while, then released. Amazingly, he walked away. No such dramas in the feature race, the Newcastle Mile. The WA horse looks like lightning, shot to an early lead in the event that's one of the major stepping stones to the Miracle Mile. But the finish was a surprise to many as the race leader slowed in the final straight. New Zealand horses first and second, and the winning Kiwi, Sly Flying, has been invited to run in the Miracle Mile.
When the weather's right, Novocastrians just love to eat outside, and the city's eateries are well aware of the moneymaker, with 91 restaurants and cafes now offering some form of alfresco dining. But obstacles such as tables and chairs on the footpath create all kinds of dramas, and the council is going about setting up a control plan to ensure both businesses and the public are getting a fair deal.
We really want to try and encourage that cosmopolitan atmosphere that we've got here, but by the same token we need to make sure that equitable access and access for all is available, because it is still a footpath area.
What defines a dining area and the kind of access such areas require are outlined in the draft Outdoor Dining Development Control Plan, which goes on public exhibition tomorrow, and Council is expecting plenty of feedback, particularly on the hot topic of banning smoking in such areas.
The non-smoking issue is going to be something that both the business areas and the community are going to have to provide Council some input into.
Meanwhile, another council initiative, the provision of free weekend parking in the King Street parking station, appears to have had a positive impact on the Market Street street markets. Stallholders have reported an increase in shoppers since the incentive came into force this weekend. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
It was a pretty even match until the last quarter. Mike Helms and Russell Hinder were on song for the Pirates, scoring 55 points between them. But the Hawks had their long-range eye in, making 7 three-pointers in the first period alone. Hurley's boys led at half-time, but with 12 minutes to play, Wollongong opened up a 12-point lead and didn't relent. Hawks coach Brendan Joyce is focused on the big picture.
A lot of people didn't expect us to make the playoffs, and with our injuries, and we look like, even myself, we're going to be in a fight for the playoffs, and I still think we are.
While Coach Hurley says he's struggling with the lack of top players.
We are a better team than what we had last year. We're just missing that other import who can score, and we'll hopefully get someone in the next couple of weeks, but we're probably going to play 3 or 4 games without one, and that could be particularly playing at home, it could be very costly for us.
The Pirates host the Adelaide 36ers next Sunday.
You may think there are enough brands of beer out there, everything from your imported beer to good old Aussie favourites. Well, that's until you meet beer connoisseur and brewer Ian Partland. The first batch of his creation, the all-natural Pig Iron Lager, is now in the brewing vats and will be available on tap in Hunter pubs and clubs next month.
The main thing, I suppose, if you smell one of the mainstream beers now, it's quite sulfidic in character. It really should smell of hops and malt, and that comes about through the materials that are used in the brewing process.
After establishing a homebrew business in Mayfield, he's now ploughed millions into this brewery in the Steel River Industrial Park on former BHP land at North Mayfield, which has helped to inspire the product name.
I was trying to come up with a fairly industrial feel for the name in what has been an industrial town through our coal mining and steelworks.
But just don't mention the words boutique brewery in front of this beer aficionado.
We've been described as a boutique brewery in a few places, and it really doesn't sit well with me. It's more the place you go to buy a frock than to buy a beer.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Standing 26 stories tall, this model shows how the tower would dwarf the rest of the buildings in Newcastle West, but the consortium of 12 Newcastle business people see it as the West End's saviour, revitalising this site which connects Hunter and King Streets. They argue that open space compensates for the height, with the entire building sitting above a ground floor plaza area on large columns.
That's over an acre of space, and in that regard, that's a significant give back by any developer to the community. The trade-off is some height.
With $600,000 already poured into the project, plus the $5 million it cost to buy the site, developer Chris Chapman last night called on the Newcastle City Council to show in principle support for the plaza development.
We didn't give council an ultimatum about the project, but we certainly let council know that we needed some indication as to whether they can support this project in principle.
Despite the height, the Lord Mayor says the development should be considered due to the open space benefits to the community.
You can quite rightly say, well, gee, if we approve this, will there be another one near it, and so on, and where will all that finish? The answer to that is that this is a one-off opportunity because there's such a large site being amalgamated.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Phillips Engineering is testament to just how tough finding skilled workers has become. The business employs 66 full-time staff and 6 apprentices, but with another 20 vacancies has been forced to rethink its recruitment strategy.
We try and make as many comforts as what we possibly can to keep people and personnel on board. We vary our works, so therefore they're not assigned to just similar tasks.
Looking for workers has become a continual process for many businesses in Muswellbrook. Some have now put out the call statewide for recruits.
While there's an estimated 160 positions still to be filled across Muswellbrook, there's some good news with a number of jobs being snapped up in the past 2 months.
Had 5 in one industry and 4 in another, of people that have come from Tamworth and the Central Coast and all over in both boilermaking and fitting positions.
Meanwhile, it was the first day on the job for a group of apprentices in Newcastle today. A total of 60 men will be trained in engineering, electrical and automotive trades with 4Jacks Engineering at sites in Carrington, Hexham and Tomago. Colleen West, NBN News. It's been 12 months since these people have had a place they could call their second home. Residents of the Overton homestead were today busy checking out just what's on offer in their new and spacious digs, and judging by the response, it gets a big thumbs up.
I like it here. I'll get make all the friends. Pay cards or watch my DVDs.
Hunter Integrated Care provides respite for up to 30 families of people with a mental or physical disability. But that care has been scaled back since last year's massive hailstorm, which destroyed the organisation's former house.
22 families who were constantly on the phone needing a break because it gets very stressful.
Thanks to the generosity of the Bengalla Mining Company, life skills training and social activities will continue along with overnight stays.
We've got the accommodation available to us, and we thought it was probably one of the best ways you could actually utilise that accommodation.
It allows these people to have the carers to have a break and recharge their batteries and carry on. And without that break, their health deteriorates and they find the stress just incredible.
They can be themselves without their parents sort of hovering around, and they can do whatever they want to do in a safe environment.
Colleen West, NBN News.